I don't need a kid like you. Get out. And don't come back." The words sliced through the cold air like a knife, louder than the whispering wind or the falling rain. People turned their heads, startled, then quickly turned away. It was a cemetery, after all. No one wanted to be part of a scene. Not during a burial. Anna collapsed beside the fresh grave, sobbing uncontrollably. Her tiny body shook as she pressed her face into the cold, wet earth. "Mama," she cried out, her voice raw and cracked. "Please don't leave me. Please wake up." Her little pink dress was soaked, clinging to her trembling limbs, and mud smeared her knees. The teddy bear she clutched was soaked, one eye missing, the stitching on its neck already unraveling. She didn't care. She couldn't feel the cold. The pain inside her was so much worse. But the man standing behind her, her stepfather, showed no emotion. He didn't flinch. He didn't comfort her. He just sneered. "I told your mother this would happen," he muttered to no one in particular. "Now it's just me. And this whole house? Mine." Ethan Whitmore had just arrived, stepping out of his black car at the edge of the cemetery, umbrella in hand. He wasn't close to the woman being buried, but she had once cared for his dying daughter, Sarah, 4 years ago. That mattered. Enough for him to come, quietly, to stand in the back and offer silent thanks. But now, his feet froze as he took in the scene, a little black girl, sobbing uncontrollably beside a fresh grave, and a man, white, mid-42nd, sharp suit and colder eyes looming over her with impatience and disgust. "Get up," the man snapped. "I've packed your things. What little you had. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Anna looked up, tears and rain blending on her cheeks. "Where will I go?" she asked through her cries. The man pulled a crumpled grocery bag from behind him and tossed it at her feet. Inside were a few shirts, socks, and a tattered pair of shoes. Nothing else. "Figure it out," he said. "Maybe the state'll put you somewhere." "You're throwing her out?" Ethan's voice cut through the air like thunder. The man turned, clearly caught off guard. "Excuse me?" Ethan stepped forward, eyes hard beneath the brim of his umbrella. "You're kicking a 6-year-old child out of her home today? After her mother's funeral?" "She's not mine," the man said with a shrug. "No legal ties, no blood, and that house? It's in my name now. She has no rights to it. Her mother just died." "Yeah, and I didn't ask for this. I married the woman, not the kid. Now I'm free." Anna reached for the grocery bag, trying to gather the wet clothes with shaking hands. Ethan's stomach twisted. He took a deep breath and lowered himself to Anna's level. "What's your name, sweetheart?" She looked at him, eyes red and swollen. "Anna, you hungry?" he asked gently. She nodded. "Cold?" She nodded again, this time slower. "I've got a warm car and a full pantry," Ethan said. "Would you like to come with me? If this moment touched your heart, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share this story with someone who believes in second chances. More powerful stories are on the way. Anna looked at the grave, then at the man still standing with arms crossed. "You don't belong here," the man barked again. "You're just excess baggage. Your mother didn't even leave a will." Ethan stood, towering over him now. "What's your name?" "Darnell Pierce," the man said, puffing his chest. "Well, Mr. Pierce," Ethan said, stepping closer. "You may have inherited the house, but I doubt the court would appreciate how you're disposing of this childlike garbage." "You threatening me?" "No," Ethan said calmly. "I'm telling you, walk away while you still have dignity left." Darnell scoffed. "Whatever, she's yours now." And just like that, he turned on his heel, walked to his car, and drove away. Anna stood frozen, shivering beside the grave. The grocery bag slipped from her hand. Ethan bent down again. "Come on. Let's get you out of this rain." She hesitated, then stepped into his arms. Inside the car, the heater was already running. Ethan wrapped his coat around her small frame as she nestled into the seat, silent again. She held the bear against her chest like it was the last piece of her mother she had left. "Do you want me to say anything?" Ethan asked softly. "For your mom?" Anna's lips quivered. "She made pancakes shaped like hearts." Ethan nodded. "That sounds like something worth remembering." They drove in silence, the city lights of Chicago flickering in the wet windshield. Ethan's estate in North Shore was 15 minutes away, but it felt like a lifetime. At the front door, Ruth opened it with her usual sharpness, but stopped cold when she saw the girl in Ethan's arms. "Lord, have mercy," she whispered. "What happened?" "She lost her mother today," Ethan said. "And someone needed to make sure she didn't lose everything else." He carried Anna upstairs himself, gently, like she was made of glass. As he laid her on the guest bed, she finally spoke again. "Is it okay if I sleep with my bear?" "Of course," Ethan said. "He's part of the family now." She clutched the bear tighter, her eyes already closing. Outside, the storm began to pass. But inside Ethan Whitmore, something else was just beginning. The morning light crept slowly through the heavy curtains of the guest room. Golden slivers of sun warmed the edges of the comforter, catching on the folds of a navy blue sweatshirt that hung awkwardly off Anna's small shoulders. The stuffed bear, now dry but still missing an eye, lay nestled beneath her chin. Ethan Whitmore stood quietly in the doorway, his coffee untouched in his hand. He had been there for several minutes, simply watching the girl sleep. It wasn't something he planned to do, and yet, he couldn't look away. There was something haunting about her stillness. Children didn't usually sleep like that, not in a stranger's house, not after burying their mother, not after being thrown out like a broken toy. But Anna slept without fear, as if her little body had finally collapsed from exhaustion. As if, for one night at least, she believed she might be safe. A soft knock behind him broke the silence. "Are you going to stand there all day, or should I bring her some breakfast?" Ruth asked, her voice hushed but firm. Ethan turned, startled. "She's still out cold." Ruth glanced past him. "Poor thing, probably hasn't slept in days." "She cried herself to sleep," Ethan said quietly. Then nothing, just silence. Ruth crossed her arms, leaning against the hallway wall. "So what now? You planning to keep her here?" Ethan didn't answer right away. He sipped the lukewarm coffee, then looked at Ruth with tired eyes. "I don't know. She's not a stray dog, Ethan." "I know, and this house isn't a halfway home for broken people you feel guilty about." "I said I know." His voice was sharper than he meant it to be. Ruth raised an eyebrow but didn't push. She'd worked for Ethan for 15 years, long enough to recognize when he was fighting a battle inside that he didn't yet understand. She softened. "All right, well, I'll make her some oatmeal, with cinnamon and apples. Kids still like that, right?" "Thanks, Ruth." As she disappeared down the stairs, Ethan stepped into the room. He placed the coffee on the side table and pulled the curtains back slowly. The room brightened, and Anna stirred. Her eyes opened, blinking against the light. "Hey," Ethan said gently. "Good morning." Anna didn't speak. She sat up slowly, still clutching the bear. "How'd you sleep?" She looked around the room at the pale blue walls, the bookshelf with leather-bound volumes she couldn't read, the window overlooking the snow-dusted garden. Then, finally, she looked at him. "I didn't dream," she said softly. Ethan felt something hitch in his chest. "That's good, I think." Anna nodded. "I thought you might be hungry. Ruth's making oatmeal." She's the other lady?" "Yeah," he smiled. "She's tough, but she makes the best cornbread this side of the Mississippi." Anna didn't laugh. But she didn't cry, either. It felt like a victory. He offered her his hand. "Want to come downstairs?" She slid off the bed without answering, the sleeves of her sweatshirt dragging past her fingers. She followed him silently down the hall, down the stairs, and into the sunlit kitchen, where the smell of cinnamon and warm butter filled the air. Ruth was already setting a bowl on the table. "Morning, little miss," she said without turning around. "Made you something sweet. Hope you've got room for seconds." Anna slid into the chair and eyed the bowl carefully. Ruth handed her a spoon. "Go on. It won't bite." After a few cautious bites, Anna glanced up. "It's good," she mumbled. Ruth winked. "Course it is." Ethan watched from the other end of the table, his own toast untouched. He couldn't stop thinking about the night before, about the way Darnell had tossed her clothes into a bag like trash, about the way Anna had cried at her mother's grave. "She said her mom made pancakes shaped like hearts," he said suddenly. Ruth looked up from the sink. Sounds like the kind of woman who deserved a better ending. She didn't leave a will, nothing for Anna, no guardianship plan, Just gone. And that man? Ruth asked. Claims the house is his now, legal or not. He's acting like it. And he made it very clear he wants nothing to do with her. Well, that doesn't make him right, Ruth snapped. Makes him dangerous. Ethan looked at Anna, who had finished her bowl and was now petting the bear absent-mindedly. Do you want to go back to that house? He asked her directly. She froze. Then, very quietly, she said, He locked me in the laundry room once. Because I spilled juice. Ruth dropped the dish she was holding. It clattered into the sink, unbroken but loud. Ethan stood slowly. Anna, did he ever hurt you? She didn't speak. But she shook her head, and then whispered, Not when Mama was there. Ruth stepped forward and placed a hand gently on Anna's shoulder. You don't have to go back, baby. Not now. Not ever. I don't have anywhere else to go. Ethan exhaled sharply, his hands on his hips. That's not true anymore. Anna looked up at him. You're staying here, he said firmly, at least for now. Until we figure things out. And no one is going to lock you in a laundry room again. She didn't smile. But her eyes lost a fraction of their weight. A tiny, nearly invisible shift. A little less fear. A little more light. Ruth turned back to the stove. Well then, I'd better start making more of everything. We've got growing to do. Ethan left the kitchen and walked into his office, shutting the door behind him. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in years. Lawrence Blackwell, said a familiar voice on the other end. Larry, Ethan said. It's Ethan Whitmore. A pause. Well, damn. Didn't expect to hear from you again. You finally ready to sell that software patent? No, Ethan said. I need a custody lawyer. Another pause. Whose kid? Doesn't matter. She has no one, and the man who threw her out wants to keep the house her mother died in. I want that reversed. I want her safe. Lawrence's voice dropped. You know this won't be clean. I'm not asking for clean. I'm asking for fast. Lawrence sighed. I'll call in a favor. But Ethan, be ready. This might dig up more than you think. Ethan looked out the window. Snow had started to fall. Slowly, gently, covering the ugly parts of the world in silence. I'm already there, he said. Do whatever it takes. And he hung up. The snow thickened as the day wore on, blanketing Ethan Whitmore's estate in a hush of white. The grand oak trees in the front yard stood like sentinels under the weight of winter. Inside the house, the fire crackled steadily in the sitting room, casting warm shadows across the floor. But Ethan couldn't feel the warmth. He sat alone in his office, a legal pad in front of him, untouched. The words he meant to write plans, questions, steps remained trapped in his mind, knotted by the pull of memory. Down the hall, he could hear Anna's quiet footsteps, the soft rhythm of a child not yet used to walking freely. Every now and then, she stopped, as if waiting for permission to move again. She's too quiet, Ethan muttered. Ruth, standing in the doorway, folded her arms. She's surviving, Ethan. That silence is armor. He turned to face her. I keep thinking, what if I hadn't shown up yesterday? What if she was still out there? You did show up, Ruth said gently, and she's here now. That counts for something. But Ethan wasn't satisfied with something. He needed to know what he was doing next. Lawrence is pulling property records and background on the stepfather, he said. If there's fraud in the house transfer, we can challenge it. Ruth raised an eyebrow. You sure about all this? No, he admitted. Not at all. May. There was a long pause. Then maybe it's time you talk to her, she said. Not just feed her, not just give her shelter, talk to her. That night, after dinner, Ethan found Anna curled up on the couch in the library, flipping slowly through an old picture book. She didn't look up when he entered. The fire was low, and she seemed absorbed in the flickering pages. Do you want to see something? Ethan asked. She looked at him, wary but curious. He held out a small silver frame. Inside was a photo of a young girl with wide blue eyes and a grin too big for her face. She was missing one front tooth and holding a puppy in her lap. This is Sarah, he said softly. My daughter. Anna looked at the picture a long time. She's pretty. She was loud. Ethan said with a faint smile. She liked to sing in the bathtub and used to name every stuffed animal after a president. Anna's lips twitched, just barely. What happened to her? She asked. Ethan sat down slowly. She got sick. Cancer. The last 6 months were the hardest. But your mom. He paused. Your mom made those months a little better. She used to sneak in stories and bring Sarah pink lemonade even when the doctors said not to. Anna nodded. She made me pink lemonade too, with strawberries. There was a silence between them then, deep and strangely warm. Sometimes I think I should have saved her, Ethan whispered. More to himself than to Anna. But I couldn't. You're saving me, Anna said quietly. He looked at her, stunned. You didn't have to. But you did. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. There was nothing he could say to that, not yet. Later that evening, Ethan returned to the upstairs hallway and found Ruth folding laundry at the edge of the guest room bed. She talked to you? She asked. More than I expected, he replied. She remembers the little things. Lemonade, songs, stuffed animals. Children remember what matters, Ruth said. Even when we think they're not paying attention. Ethan hesitated. I keep thinking of Sarah. But it's not the same. Anna's not her. No, she's not, Ruth said without softness. Don't make that mistake. I'm not trying to replace anyone. I didn't say you were. But just make sure you're not rescuing ghosts instead of the girl in front of you. Ethan didn't respond. He stood still for a long moment before turning to go. That night, as he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan turning slowly above him, he thought about Darnell Pierce. About the way the man had stood over Anna at the grave. About the dead look in his eyes. And the house Anna's home, or what had been now in the hands of that man. It wasn't right. He rose before dawn the next morning and went down to his study. The lights of the estate glowed dimly, snow falling in soft waves outside the windows. He called Lawrence again. I want you to find everything, he said. Dig into Darnell's finances, the deed transfer, the mortgage. I don't care how deep you have to go. You think he forged something? I think he wanted the house more than the girl, and I think he's willing to lie to keep it. I'll call you in 48 hours, Lawrence said. Ethan hung up and turned toward the fireplace. He pulled open the drawer in the side table beside it. Inside was an old folder labeled Sarah. Final weeks. He hadn't opened it since the funeral. Medical records. Hospice notes. Messages from nurses. But now he searched for one document in particular, a handwritten note from Anna's mother. He remembered Sarah showing it to him once. She said she liked to write letters, Sarah had said. Even to herself. He found it, folded inside a sketchbook. The handwriting was neat. Round. If anything happens to me, I hope someone kind will take care of my Anna. I don't have much to leave her, but she is good, so good. Please don't let her be forgotten. Ethan closed the book with trembling hands. That afternoon, he brought Anna a small box. Inside was a new eye for her teddy bear. I used to be terrible at sewing, he said, but Ruth supervised. Anna smiled this time more fully as she hugged the bear. What's his name again? He asked. Justice, she whispered. He nodded. Then Justice deserves both eyes. And maybe, just maybe, so did the world. The next morning broke with a quiet tension in the air. The snow had stopped sometime during the night, leaving behind a smooth, glistening layer that coated everything in sight. The trees in the yard looked like they'd been dipped in sugar, but inside the Whitmore estate, the atmosphere was far from sweet. Ethan sat at the breakfast table, staring down at his coffee, untouched. Across from him, Anna spooned warm oatmeal into her mouth with slow, deliberate motions. She didn't talk much in the mornings, at least, not yet, but she watched him, studying his face like she was waiting for something. Maybe a signal. Maybe a sign that she was still safe. I need to go somewhere today, Ethan finally said, keeping his tone even. Anna looked up. I won't be gone long, just a few hours. Ruth will be here with you. Where are you going? She asked softly. Ethan hesitated. To your old house. The spoon froze in her hand. Why? I need to see what Darnell's doing. He's claiming the house is his now. But if your mom left anything behind, anything that proves otherwise, I want to find it. Anna's face went blank, like a curtain falling. He changed the locks. "I know," Ethan said, "but I'm not going to knock." She looked at him, alarmed. "I won't take anything that's not mine," he reassured. "But if your mom wrote something down like a letter or a will, I need to know. That house could still be yours." Anna didn't answer, but her eyes dropped to her oatmeal, suddenly unappetizing. "Did she ever mention hiding things?" Ethan asked gently. "Maybe a box? Or papers?" Anna's fingers tightened around the spoon. Then she nodded. There was a green tin under the floorboard in the bedroom closet. She said it was for emergencies. Ethan leaned forward. "You're sure?" "She told me not to touch it," Anna whispered, "but I saw her put papers in it, and a picture of me and her." Ethan stood. "Then that's what I'm going to find." 2 hours later, Ethan parked 2 houses down from Anna's old home. It was a modest, single-story bungalow on a corner lot, with a peeling mailbox and a lopsided porch railing. It looked even smaller now that he was seeing it through her eyes. This was where she had been raised, where she had been loved, and where she had been thrown away. Darnell's car was gone. Good. Ethan walked quickly down the side alley, avoiding the snow-covered path that led to the front door. He carried a small crowbar in his coat just in case, and wore gloves to avoid leaving prints. Not that he was worried about getting caught. He wasn't here to steal. He was here to witness. He pried open the back window, slid it upward with practiced ease, and climbed inside. The house was quiet and cold. The heat had clearly been shut off. Boxes lined the hallway, some open, some already taped up. Darnell was preparing to sell, or move, or both. Ethan moved carefully down the hall, past the kitchen, which still had 2 dirty mugs in the sink. The living room smelled faintly of dust and old beer. He entered the bedroom at the end of the hall. It was empty except for a mattress on the floor and a cracked mirror leaning against the wall. The closet door hung open. Inside, just a few wire hangers swayed slightly, like ghosts swinging in silence. Ethan knelt down. He ran his fingers along the floor, tapping gently until he heard the hollow thud. He reached into his coat, took out a small flathead screwdriver, and began to pry up the floorboard. After a moment, it gave way. There it was, a green tin box, scratched and dusty but intact. He opened it with careful hands. Inside, a folded birth certificate. Anna's name in bold. Her mother's signature. A photograph Anna, maybe 3 years old. Her cheeks full and smiling. Her mother holding her. Eyes tired but joyful. And at the bottom, a letter. To whoever finds this, it began in slanted handwriting. If anything happens to me, and if Anna is alone, this is proof that she belongs in our home. No one else has a right to it. I was in the process of filing a will, but I couldn't afford the lawyer. I trusted Darnell, maybe foolishly. But this house was bought with my money. My late husband left it to me, and everything in it is for Anna. If you can read this, please protect her. Ethan folded the letter carefully and returned it to the box. He exhaled slowly, something hard unwinding in his chest. This was more than enough to start a legal fight. More than a lifeline, it was proof. As he stood to leave, a sharp click echoed through the house. The front door. Someone was home. He froze. Darnell's voice rang out. "Damn snow forgot my phone charger." Ethan slid the box into his coat and moved to the window. But before he could escape, Darnell's voice grew louder. "Wait a minute." Footsteps. Faster now. Ethan climbed out the back window just as Darnell stormed into the bedroom. He sprinted through the alley, reached his car, and pulled away just as Darnell appeared on the front porch, shouting after him. "You think you can break into my house, Whitmore? I'll see you in court." Ethan didn't answer. He was already dialing his lawyer. Back at the estate, Anna sat at the window, her bear in her lap. When she saw Ethan's car pull in, she didn't run to greet him, but her shoulders dropped slightly. She'd been holding her breath. He entered, brushing snow from his coat. Ruth looked up from the kitchen. "Well?" she asked. Ethan placed the green tin on the counter. Ruth raised an eyebrow. "You found it?" "And more." He looked toward Anna. She walked over slowly, eyes on the tin. Ethan opened it. Let her see for herself. She picked up the photo, her small fingers tracing the edge. She wore that dress on my birthday, she whispered. Then she looked up at Ethan. Is this enough to stop him? Ethan nodded. We're going to make sure you get back what's yours. Anna didn't smile. But she didn't look away either. And in that steady, searching gaze, Ethan saw what she hadn't said aloud. Hope, quiet, careful, but there. The next morning, Ethan sat in Lawrence Blackwell's corner office overlooking downtown Chicago. The windows stretched from floor to ceiling, the skyline layered in soft white snow, muffling the city's usual chaos. But inside the room, tension hummed like electricity. Lawrence, a man known for his composure, looked visibly agitated as he spread documents across the desk. You broke into the house? Lawrence asked, adjusting his gold-rimmed glasses. I didn't steal anything, Ethan replied calmly. Everything I took belonged to Anna and her mother. I have the photo, the letter, the birth certificate. It proves intent, even if it's not a formal will. Lawrence rubbed his forehead. Intent isn't ownership. You're lucky Darnell hasn't filed a police report yet. He threatened to call CPS on a 6-year-old girl, Ethan said, voice low. He locked her in a laundry room. I'm not concerned about his moral high ground. Lawrence looked at him carefully. You really want to do this? I'm already doing it, Ethan said. Tell me what we need to make her safe, permanently. Lawrence pulled out a legal pad. All right. First, we file for emergency temporary custody. Based on abandonment and risk of harm, we'll need character witnesses, school records, medical records, anything that shows you can provide a stable environment. That green tin and the letter? They'll help, but they're not bulletproof. Darnell's going to fight back, especially if he thinks you're threatening the house. I want him nowhere near her. Ethan said flatly. She's terrified of him. Then we need to be ready for court. You'll need to testify, and she might have to, too. Ethan stiffened. She's 6. I won't put her through that. If he pushes for custody rights or visitation, we may not have a choice. Ethan stood and paced to the window. Below, taxis crawled along slushy streets, the city moving in slow motion. His voice was quiet when he spoke again. She asked me yesterday if this means she belongs somewhere now. Lawrence looked up. And what did you tell her? I said yes. Then we'll fight, Lawrence said, picking up the phone. I'll file the emergency petition today. Back at the estate, Anna sat cross-legged on the library rug, coloring quietly in a notebook Ruth had given her. The television was off. The tablet Ethan had offered still lay untouched in its box. She didn't ask for toys. She didn't even ask questions. But when Ruth brought in a plate of grilled cheese sandwiches, she looked up with wide, cautious eyes. Did he say if I have to go back? Ruth sat down beside her, brushing invisible crumbs from her apron. No one's sending you anywhere, baby. Anna pressed her crayon harder into the page. He said I was just a burden. That mama only kept me around because she felt guilty. Ruth felt her jaw tighten. That man doesn't know a damn thing about love. Anna hesitated. He said people like me don't get to live in houses like this. Ruth reached out and gently turned Anna's face toward hers. Listen to me, sugar. This house, these walls, they don't care what color you are, but people do. And some of them are just plain wrong. That doesn't mean you believe them. Anna's eyes welled up, but she nodded. Just then, the front door opened, and Ethan's footsteps echoed through the entryway. Where's my lawyer? Ruth called out. Ethan appeared in the doorway, brushing snow off his coat. He's filing the paperwork now. Anna stood up slowly. Are they going to ask me questions? Ethan crouched down to her level. Maybe. But only if they have to. And I'll be right there with you. She nodded, her bottom lip quivering. I don't want to lie. You won't have to, he said softly. All you have to do is tell the truth. And what if they say I can't stay? Ethan took a long breath. Then, gently, he placed his hand on her shoulder. They won't, he said. I'll make sure of it. 2 days later, they appeared before the family court judge for the emergency custody hearing. The courtroom was quiet and sterile, the walls lined with gray paneling and buzzing fluorescent lights. Anna sat beside Ruth in the front row. Her little hands clenched around Justice the Bear, Ethan stood at the defendant's table with Lawrence, while Darnell sat smugly across the aisle, arms crossed and wearing a sharp blazer that tried to hide the bitterness underneath. The judge, a gray-haired woman named Marla Kinsey, looked down at the file with pursed lips. "Mr. Whitmore, you are not biologically related to the child. What legal standing are you claiming for emergency custody?" Lawrence stood. "Your Honor, Mr. Whitmore is petitioning on the grounds of abandonment, supported by eyewitness testimony and physical evidence found in the child's former residence. We also have a statement of intent from the mother and a character affidavit from the child's current caregiver." Judge Kinsey flipped through the documents, her brow furrowing. "And what is Mr. Pierce's position in this matter?" Darnell stood. "She's not my kid. I was married to her mother for less than 2 years. The house is legally mine now, and I'm not equipped to raise a child. But I don't agree with some stranger taking her either." "You abandoned her," Ethan said, stepping forward. "You packed her clothes in a plastic bag and left her in the snow next to her mother's grave. That's a lie. She was crying beside the coffin, and you told her to find her own way home." "I told her the truth," Darnell barked. "Kids need to learn life isn't fair." Silence filled the room. Judge Kinsey looked at Darnell, her expression hard. "And where were you taking her when you left the cemetery?" I had work." The judge nodded slowly. "Mr. Whitmore, how has the child adjusted to your home?" "She's eating, sleeping, talking, slowly, but she's safe." "And do you intend to pursue permanent custody?" Ethan looked at Anna, then back at the judge. "Yes," he said, "I do." The judge sat back in her chair and tapped her pen twice against the desk. "Emergency custody is granted to Mr. Whitmore for a period of 90 days, pending investigation. The child will remain in his care during that time, and a court-appointed caseworker will conduct home visits and interviews. Final custody will be determined after review." Darnell stood abruptly. "So that's it? You're giving her away?" Judge Kinsey narrowed her eyes. "No, Mr. Pierce. I'm protecting her from you." With that, she banged the gavel once, ending the session. Outside the courthouse, snow began falling again, soft and slow. Ethan crouched beside Anna and zipped up her coat. "See," he said gently. "You're not going anywhere." Anna looked up at him with quiet disbelief. "I get to stay? For now?" He smiled. "And hopefully, for good." She didn't answer. Instead, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small paper heart she'd folded from a page in her coloring book. She handed it to him. "For keeping your promise," she said. Ethan took the paper, holding it carefully in his palm. "Thank you," he said. "Not just for the paper, but for believing." Ethan had dealt with investors, federal regulators, and billion-dollar boardroom wars. But nothing in his life had required more patience or more restraint than learning how to braid a 6-year-old's hair. Anna sat perfectly still on the floor of his study, her knees tucked under her, her favorite hoodie slipping off one shoulder. Her wild curls were damp from her bath. And Ruth had left Ethan with specific instructions. 2 braids, part it down the middle. Be gentle with the scalp. Gentle. Ethan could design an artificial intelligence algorithm in his sleep. But detangling the crown of a grieving child's head was another matter entirely. "Ow," Anna said softly. "Sorry," Ethan murmured. "I think I got it this time." She didn't flinch again. She simply sat, staring out the large window where the snow had begun falling again fine, dry flakes that dusted the glass like powdered sugar. "Do you think I'll still be here at Christmas?" she asked without turning. Ethan paused, the half-formed braid in his hands. "That's 4 weeks away." "Why do you ask?" She shrugged. "He always said I'd end up in a group home by Christmas." Ethan felt something inside him twist something sharp and cold. He gently finished the braid, tied it off, and moved to sit in front of her. "Anna," he said, keeping his voice steady, "you will still be here at Christmas and New Year's, and your birthday, and every day after that, unless you decide otherwise." She looked at him then, eyes wide and cautious. "You mean that?" "I don't say things I don't mean." She was quiet for a moment. "Can we make pancakes on Christmas? Heart-shaped." She nodded. "Absolutely." A small smile crept onto her face, the first one that felt unguarded. That night, after Ruth tucked Anna into bed and turned out the light, Ethan returned to his office. The green tin sat on the desk, its contents now carefully preserved in a folder marked Custody, Pierce Case. Lawrence had assured him that a full case review was underway, and the court-appointed social worker would visit next week. Still, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. At 2:13 a.m., the security system chirped. Ethan sat bolt upright in bed, adrenaline firing through him before his brain caught up. Back patio motion detected, the mechanical voice announced. He grabbed his phone and pulled up the live camera feed. There, at the edge of the yard, was a dark figure standing near the garden gate. Darnell. He was smoking, pacing slowly, staring toward the house with a cold deliberation that made Ethan's skin crawl. Without hesitation, Ethan called the police. By the time they arrived 15 minutes later, Darnell was gone, but not before carving something into the snow on the windshield of Ethan's car. Thieves get what's coming. The next morning, Ethan showed the footage to Ruth. "He's getting desperate," she muttered. "And that makes him dangerous. I've already added extra cameras, motion lights, and the alarms on a hair trigger. We need more than gadgets," Ruth said, crossing her arms. "We need to tell Anna." Ethan hesitated. "She's just starting to feel safe here." "Exactly," Ruth snapped, "which means she deserves the truth. Kids sense fear better than dogs. If we don't tell her, she'll make up something worse." Later that day, after Anna finished her spelling lesson and was curled up on the living room rug drawing pictures of snowmen and bears, Ethan knelt beside her. "Can we talk for a second?" he asked. She looked up, crayon in hand. "I want to tell you something important, and I want you to know that no matter what I say next, you are safe. Do you understand?" She nodded, her body tense. "Darnell came to the house last night." Her face fell. "He didn't try to get in. He just stood outside. The police came, and he left. But I thought you should know." Anna stared at the floor. "He used to do that. When Mama was late coming home from work. Just stand at the window, waiting." Ethan's stomach turned. "He's not coming inside, Anna. Ever. I promise you that." She didn't speak for a long moment. Then, almost in a whisper, she asked, "Is he going to try and take me back?" "No," Ethan said firmly. "Not if I have anything to say about it." "And if the judge says yes?" He hesitated, just for a second. Then I'll fight harder." Anna reached out and took his hand, small and trembling. "Will you still fight if I make mistakes?" Ethan felt something in his chest crack wide open. "Especially then," he said. Later that week, the court-appointed social worker arrived. Her name was Miss Paula Hughes, a tall woman in her 50s with sensible shoes, a warm laugh, and a clipboard that seemed surgically attached to her arm. She spent nearly 3 hours at the house, inspecting the kitchen, bedrooms, bathrooms, and yard. She interviewed Ethan thoroughly about his routines, his past, his finances, his parenting philosophy. Then she sat down with Anna. They spoke alone in the library while Ethan stood in the hall, heart pounding, listening to muffled voices. When it was over, Miss Hughes thanked them both and promised a full report would be filed with the court. "She's bright," she said on her way out, "and quiet. But she knows who she trusts. She's been through hell," Ethan said, "and still wants to draw you pictures." Paula smiled. "That means something." That night, after dinner, Anna brought Ethan a drawing. It was a house, clearly. His house with tall windows and a garden full of snowflakes. Standing out front were 2 figures, one tall, one small, both smiling. In the child's handwriting, at the bottom, were 3 words. "This is home." Ethan stared at the drawing for a long moment, his throat tight. She stood beside him, watching his reaction carefully. "Do you like it?" she asked, almost afraid. He looked down at her, then pulled her gently into a hug. "I love it," he said. "It's perfect." Anna pressed her head into his chest. And for the first time since she had arrived, she whispered something he never expected to hear. "Good night, Dad." Ethan didn't correct her. He just held her tighter. It had been 3 days since Anna called him Dad. Ethan hadn't stopped thinking about it since. The word came unannounced, soft as snowfall. Yet it echoed louder in his soul than any courtroom verdict ever had. He didn't correct her, and she never said it again. But it hung in the air between them now, unspoken, fragile, sacred. Ethan sat in his study that morning, a cup of black coffee cooling beside him. As he reviewed the social worker's preliminary report, Ruth had found it in the mailbox earlier, stamped confidential and signed by Paula Hughes. He read each line slowly. Anna exhibits signs of trauma, induced anxiety and emotional withdrawal, but shows remarkable resilience. Mr. Whitmore's home provides physical safety, emotional stability, and appropriate educational support. The bond between them is forming rapidly. Her preference to remain in his care was stated clearly and without hesitation. Ethan set the report down and leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. One step closer. His phone buzzed. A message from Lawrence. Darnell's filed a counter-petition. He's demanding either full custody or buyout rights to the house. Claims Anna's manipulating the system. Ethan clenched his jaw. Manipulating the system? She was 6. He picked up the phone and called immediately. What's the angle? Ethan asked when Lawrence answered. He's painting you as some rich white savior who swooped in and used his money to steal a child. That's disgusting. Effective, Lawrence said bluntly. He's got a new lawyer, ruthless type. They're building a narrative. You're compensating for grief, playing hero. No legal grounds for long-term guardianship. I have Anna's mother's letter. And her daughter's trust. Doesn't matter if they turn this into a PR circus. You need to be ready. I was born ready, Ethan said, then paused. But Anna wasn't. She shouldn't have to be, Lawrence sighed. There's another problem. Darnell's claiming that the house legally passed to him when her mother died. No will, no prenup. He wants you off that property even retroactively. So he's after the house more than the girl. He wants both. The house gives him leverage. The girl gives him sympathy. Ethan stood and crossed to the window, fists clenched. I'll go public, he said. If he wants to make this a circus, let's bring the spotlight to him. Background checks, financials, police history. There is one thing, Lawrence added. The court's appointed a new child psychologist to evaluate Anna before the final hearing. If she freezes up or says the wrong thing, I understand. Lawrence hesitated. You sure you're up for this, Ethan? Ethan turned from the window. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. That afternoon, Ruth took Anna out to the farmer's market to give Ethan some space. He used the time to dig through every old file, receipt, and legal document Anna's mother had stored in the green tin. He found medical records, a photocopy of a tax return, even a note scribbled on the back of a grocery list that read, If anything happens to me, Anna goes to Mr. Whitmore. He helped my daughter once. He'll help her again. It wasn't a notarized will, but it was something. It was history. It was intention. When Ruth and Anna returned, the little girl came in beaming. I got apples, she said, holding up a small brown bag, and Ruth let me pick a cinnamon stick. Ethan knelt to her level. That's wonderful. But I need to talk to you about something. Anna's smile faded. Am I leaving? No, he said quickly. But a nice doctor is going to come talk to you next week. She'll ask questions. About me. About Darnell. About how you're feeling. Anna looked down. Will she send me away if I say something wrong? No, Ethan said gently. There are no wrong answers. Just be honest. Tell her how you feel. She hesitated. Will you be there? I can't be in the room, but I'll be right outside. You'll never be alone. Anna nodded, eyes wide. Then she whispered, He used to say no one would ever believe me. Ethan's heart dropped. I do. That night, as snow began to fall again. Ethan stood by the fireplace reading over the court's next hearing date. Just a week away. Too soon. And not soon enough. Anna was upstairs asleep, justice tucked under one arm. Ruth was cleaning up dinner in the kitchen, humming an old blues song softly to herself. The doorbell rang. Ethan checked the security feed, nothing but a dark figure just out of frame. He opened the door cautiously. An envelope lay on the welcome mat. Inside, photos. Grainy, black and white. Taken through a long lens. Ethan hugging Anna in the yard. Anna sleeping in the car. Ethan handing her a backpack at the courthouse. The last one was of Anna crying. No note, just the photos. Ethan's blood turned cold. It was a message. And it wasn't subtle. He showed the envelope to Ruth. That man stalking her, she hissed. He's escalating. I know. But it also means he's desperate. He's losing. And he knows it. Desperate men do stupid things. Ethan didn't sleep that night. He sat in the hallway outside Anna's room, laptop in his lap, watching court records, compiling files, building a digital fortress around her case. Every few minutes, he looked up to make sure her door was still closed, the nightlight still glowing soft blue beneath it. By dawn, he'd sent 30 pages of evidence to Lawrence. Subject line, "Let's bury him." Because Ethan wasn't just fighting for a house anymore, or a custody hearing. He was fighting for the little girl who called him Dad even when she was afraid to believe it herself. And no one was going to take that from her. Monday arrived like a slow-moving storm. Gray skies stretched above Chicago, casting the entire city in a muted melancholy. The kind of day where even the buildings seemed to whisper. Inside the Whitmore estate, however, everything was tense and alert. The court-appointed child psychologist, Dr. Elaine Sorensen, was scheduled to arrive at 10 a.m. Ruth had been baking muffins since sunrise, not because anyone would eat them, but because the smell made the house feel safe. Ethan had gone over Anna's timeline and the psychologist's credentials 3 times that morning, his nerves barely hidden beneath his pressed shirt and steady voice. Anna was dressed in her favorite sweater, the one with stars on it, and held tightly to Justice the bear, who now had a second button sewn onto his chest, a makeshift heart stitched in red. "I don't have to lie, right?" she asked Ethan quietly as he knelt beside her near the library. "No," he said gently. "You just have to tell her what's true. How you feel. What happened. What you want." Anna glanced up at him. "What if I want to stay here forever? Then that's what you tell her." The doorbell rang. Anna jumped slightly, then gripped Ethan's hand. "It's all right," he whispered. "I'll be right outside." Dr. Elaine Sorensen was in her 60s, wearing a long gray coat, wire-rimmed glasses, and a kind smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She introduced herself to Ruth and Ethan with professional warmth, then knelt down to Anna's level. "Hi there, Anna," she said softly. "Is it okay if we sit and talk for a little while? You can bring your bear." Anna gave a tiny nod. Ethan watched as they entered the study, the door closing softly behind them. He stood just outside, arms folded, listening to nothing but the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. Every minute passed like a mile. Inside, Dr. Sorensen set down her leather notebook and pen but didn't open them. She simply sat on the floor across from Anna, legs crossed, like she had all the time in the world. "Justice is his name?" she asked, nodding to the bear. Anna nodded. "He used to have one eye, but Ethan fixed him. That was kind of him. Do you like living here with Ethan?" Anna was quiet. Then, "It feels safe." "What does safe feel like?" Anna looked down at her hands. "Like no one's going to yell or lock you in the dark." Dr. Sorensen nodded slowly. "Has anyone ever done that before?" Anna's voice dropped. "He said I was too loud. So he put me in the laundry room. For hours. With the lights off." "Who did?" "Darnell." "And did you tell anyone at the time?" "Mama knew. She tried to stop him. Then she got sick." "What did Ethan do when you told him?" "He said I never had to go back there again." Dr. Sorensen smiled. "And do you believe him?" Anna looked her straight in the eye. "Yes." They talked for nearly an hour. About school. About Ethan's pancakes. About Sarah, Ethan's late daughter, and the way her picture smiled from the hallway wall. About the snow outside and how Justice didn't like the cold but liked the cuddles. And when Dr. Sorensen finally stood and opened her notebook, she said gently, "One last question, Anna. If the judge asked you who you wanted to live with, what would you say?" Anna didn't hesitate. "I want to stay here. With my dad." Outside, Ethan saw the door open and straightened. Dr. Sorensen stepped out, closing the door behind her. "She's remarkable," she said quietly. "Guarded, but intelligent, deep trauma, but she's resilient." Ethan nodded, searching her face for clues. "I'll be filing a full report," she said, slipping the notebook back into her bag. "But I'll tell you this now. Off the record, she trusts you. That matters." He exhaled, a weight loosening in his chest. She said you told her she never had to go back, Sorensen added. Don't make a liar of yourself. I won't. Later that night, Ruth made a pot roast, and the three of them ate in the kitchen like a real family. Anna had more seconds than usual, and Ethan noticed she hummed softly under her breath while eating something she hadn't done since she arrived. After dinner, Anna insisted on helping Ruth dry the dishes. Ethan stayed behind in the dining room, his phone buzzing with a new email. From Lawrence Blackwell. Subject, discovery file, urgent. Body, you're going to want to see this. Darnell's record is worse than we thought. He opened the attachment. There it was. A sealed domestic battery charge from 4 years ago before Darnell met Anna's mother. The record had been buried in another state, dismissed due to lack of testimony from the victim. But it was real, and it wasn't the only thing. Attached was a financial breakdown. Darnell had taken out a second mortgage on the house just 6 days after Anna's mother died. He'd claimed immediate financial hardship, but the funds had been funneled into a sports betting account already drained. Ethan stared at the screen, rage simmering beneath his ribs. He wasn't just a neglectful stepfather. He was a con man. And now, he was using Anna's name, her story, as a tool to gain leverage in court. Ethan forwarded the documents to Lawrence with a single sentence. Let's bury him in this. 2 nights later, Ethan was reading in his office when Ruth burst through the door, breathless. He's outside. Ethan jumped up. What? Darnell. In the driveway. He's not alone. Ethan moved fast, pulling up the security cameras. There were 2 men standing by a dark SUV, both dressed in black. One carrying what looked like a crowbar. Call the police, Ethan said, already moving toward the front hall. Now. But before he could unlock the front door, headlights flashed behind the SUV. A patrol car, lights off, had pulled in silently, called earlier by Ethan's security team when motion alerts had triggered 10 minutes prior. The officers stepped out with purpose. Darnell and his friend didn't run. They simply stood, caught like children holding stolen candy. Ethan opened the front door and stepped out onto the porch. You made a mistake tonight, he said evenly. Darnell snarled. This ain't over, Whitmore. No, Ethan agreed. But you are. As the officers placed Darnell in cuffs, one turned to Ethan. Do you want to press charges? Ethan didn't hesitate. Absolutely. He stood there, arms crossed, as the car pulled away with Darnell inside. Behind him, Anna peeked out from behind the curtain, eyes wide. Is he gone? She asked. Ethan turned, walking toward her. Yes. And he's not coming back. She ran into his arms without a word, her whole body shaking. Ethan lifted her up, held her tight, and for the first time, he realized that the war wasn't just about legal custody or property rights. It was about something deeper, about telling a child, once and for all, that she was never going to be abandoned again. The morning of the final custody hearing dawned bitterly cold, the kind of Chicago chill that cut straight through layers. Frost edged the windows of the Whitmore estate as Ethan stood in the doorway, watching Anna slip her arms into a pea-green coat Ruth had laid out the night before. Do I have to speak? Anna asked quietly, her voice barely louder than the rustling of her coat sleeves. Ethan knelt in front of her and buttoned the last clasp himself. Maybe, he said. But only if the judge thinks it's necessary. And if that happens, you just speak your truth. That's all. Anna looked up at him, searching for reassurance. You'll be there? Every step of the way, the drive to the courthouse was silent, save for the soft hum of the heater and the occasional creak of ice shifting beneath tires. Ruth came along too, dressed in her Sunday best, lips pressed into a tight line that Ethan knew meant business. She'd testified in the pretrial already, but she wanted to be there today to bear witness, as she called it. As they entered the courthouse lobby, Lawrence Blackwell met them with a grim nod. He handed Ethan a folder. Darnell's new lawyer just submitted another petition this morning. Emergency motion to delay the ruling. Claims his arrest 2 nights ago was unlawful detainment. Ethan didn't flinch. It won't work. Lawrence gave a small smile. It better not. The judge is already reviewing the psychologist's report. And the financial records? They hit hard. Very hard. Then, inside the courtroom, The air felt heavier than usual. Judge Kinsey sat poised at the bench, reading through a thick folder of notes. Darnell was seated at the petitioner's table, his arm in a sling, likely from the scuffle with the police, and a new, younger attorney by his side. He wore a black suit and a bitter scowl, his eyes fixed on Anna like a predator sizing up its prey. Ethan sat beside Lawrence, keeping Anna close on his other side. She clutched Justice the Bear tightly, her small fingers never loosening. "Court is now in session," the bailiff announced. Judge Kinsey looked up, eyes sharp. "This hearing concerns the custody of minor child Anna Mae Holloway. Both parties will be given the opportunity to speak. We will also be reviewing new evidence submitted to the court regarding Mr. Pierce's prior conduct and financial history." Darnell's lawyer stood first, voice smooth like oil on glass. He painted a picture of confusion and misunderstanding, arguing that Ethan's wealth and influence had coerced the narrative, suggesting Anna's affections had been manipulated by lavish gifts and comfort. He spoke for 10 minutes, without once saying the child's name. Then it was Lawrence's turn. He stood, calmly and deliberately, walking the judge through the sequence of events: Anna being abandoned, locked in a laundry room, the sealed abuse record, the gambling debt, and most of all, her mother's written wish that Ethan raise her if anything happened. When Lawrence finished, Judge Kinsey leaned back, eyes thoughtful. "I'd like to hear from the child," she said. Ethan's heart stopped for a second. Anna looked up at him, wide-eyed. "You don't have to," he whispered. "You can say no." But Anna shook her head. "It's okay." The judge smiled gently. "Anna, you can come sit up here with me if that makes you more comfortable." Anna stood slowly and walked forward, Justice tucked under one arm. Her steps were small but steady. The courtroom was dead silent. When she reached the bench, the judge leaned down. "How are you feeling today, Anna?" Anna nodded. "Okay. Can I ask you a few questions?" Anna looked at Ethan one last time, then back to the judge. "Yes, ma'am. Do you understand why we're here?" Anna nodded. "To see where I'll live." "That's right. Can you tell me where you feel safe?" Anna looked around the room. Her voice was barely a whisper, but clear. "With Ethan. And who makes you feel scared?" "Darnell," she said instantly. Judge Kinsey paused, then said gently, "Can you tell me why?" Anna looked down at her shoes. "He locked me in the dark. He said I was a mistake. He told Mama I ruined everything, and after she died, he said I had to leave because I didn't belong." The courtroom was dead silent. Judge Kinsey asked softly, "And what does Ethan do for you?" Anna looked up again. "He listens. He makes pancakes. He reads bedtime stories. He fixed Justice. He says I belong." Tears welled up in Ethan's eyes, and he didn't try to hide them. "Thank you, Anna," the judge said. "You've been very brave." Anna returned to her seat beside Ethan, who gently wrapped his arm around her. The judge took a long breath and looked over the courtroom. "I have reviewed the full case, including the social workers' and psychologists' reports, as well as both legal arguments and new evidence submitted by Mr. Whitmore's counsel. The court finds clear and convincing evidence of both neglect and emotional abuse by Mr. Darnell Pierce." She paused, and the silence stretched like wire. "Effective immediately. Sole legal and physical custody of Anna Mae Holloway is awarded to Ethan Whitmore." A quiet gasp rippled across the courtroom. Darnell surged to his feet. "This is ridiculous. You're just giving her away to some rich." The judge banged her gavel hard. "Mr. Pierce, you are hereby barred from contacting or approaching the child. Any violation of this order will result in criminal charges." Security moved toward him, but he stopped, gritting his teeth. "You'll regret this," he hissed at Ethan as he was escorted out. Ethan didn't respond. He was already turned toward Anna. She looked up at him, eyes wide with cautious hope. "Does this mean I stay?" Ethan knelt and cupped her face in his hands. "No, Anna. This means you're home." She smiled. Not a small one. A full, radiant, unafraid smile. Then she did something Ethan wasn't expecting. She stood tall, turned toward the judge, and said, "Thank you for listening to me." The judge blinked in surprise, then gave a warm nod. "You're welcome, sweetheart." That took real courage. Outside the courthouse, Reporters were already gathering. Lawrence pulled Ethan aside. "You want to talk to the press?" Ethan shook his head. "Not today. Then I'll handle it." As they walked toward the car, Ruth opened her arms. That girl just made every woman in that courtroom cry. Anna ran into her hug. They drove back to the estate in silence. Anna stared out the window, justice in her lap. Then, as the gates opened and the familiar driveway came into view, she whispered, "I think Mama would be happy. She'd be proud," Ethan said. "So am I." Later that night, Ruth brought out a cake she'd secretly baked. On top, in red icing, were the words, "Welcome home, Anna." They lit candles. They sang. They danced in the kitchen. And for the first time in a long, long time, Anna laughed, loud, carefree, and full of life, because she wasn't just staying. She was beginning. The days following the custody hearing felt like a new chapter, not just for Anna, but for Ethan as well. The house felt lighter. Somehow less like a mausoleum of memories and more like a home finally catching its breath. Laughter returned, echoing from the kitchen where Ruth taught Anna how to roll cookie dough, to the library where Ethan and Anna built towers of books taller than she was. But beneath the warmth, a quiet tension still lingered in the corners of Ethan's mind, a sense that the storm hadn't entirely passed. One morning, as snow dusted the driveway like powdered sugar, Ethan stepped outside to fetch the paper. A white envelope lay at the foot of the gate, half buried in slush. No stamp, no return address, just his name, written in all caps with a marker that bled through the paper. He opened it slowly. Inside was a single sheet. "You stole her. Enjoy your win. You don't know what she is." There was no signature, no threat. Just a statement, a cryptic warning that left Ethan staring into the trees long after the cold bit into his skin. When he brought it inside, Ruth took one look and muttered, "That man's not done." Ethan nodded. "Or someone else is getting involved." He called Lawrence immediately. "We need to run a background check. Not just on Darnell. I want to know everything about Anna's mother, friends, family, anyone who might think they had a claim." Lawrence didn't ask questions. He just said, "Give me 48 hours. That afternoon, Anna came home from school with a pink drawing in her backpack, a picture of a snow angel and a smiling sun. She handed it to Ethan with a grin. "That's me. And that's you in the sun. 'Cause you're warm." He swallowed the lump in his throat. "I love it." Then she said something strange. "Mrs. Jenkins said she knew my mom." Ethan paused. "Who's Mrs. Jenkins?" "My new art teacher. She said Mama used to work at the downtown center. They did crafts together." Ethan smiled, though a sliver of unease crept into him. He'd never heard of Mrs. Jenkins before. Never once heard her mother mention that name during Sarah's treatments. Still, it wasn't odd for people to come out of the woodwork after a tragedy. Later that night, when Anna was asleep and the house had gone still, Ethan pulled out the green tin box again. It was nearly empty now, just a few receipts, a dried flower, and a photo of Anna's mother holding her as a baby. But on the back of the photo, scribbled in faded ink, were initials, 12W. Tell her the truth one day. 2W, Ethan muttered. Not Darnell, someone else. He scanned the image again. In the background, just barely in focus, was a younger man standing beside Anna's mother. White, tall, wearing a baseball cap. His hand rested gently on the woman's shoulder. Ethan snapped a photo of the image and sent it to Lawrence with the message. Find out who 2W Island Cross. Check with any prior guardianship or custody claims. The next day, Ethan decided to visit Anna's school. Not as a protective gesture, but to meet Mrs. Jenkins in person. He signed in at the office and was directed to the art room, where children's paintings hung like stained glass across the windows. Mrs. Jenkins was a woman in her early 40s, warm smile, dreadlocks tied in a scarf, and paint stains on her sleeves. You're Anna's guardian? She asked. Yes, Ethan Whitmore. She's a remarkable girl, quiet but expressive. I could tell right away there was more going on than she let on, but she's resilient. You said you knew her mother? Mrs. Jenkins nodded. We volunteered together, years ago. Art therapy for cancer patients. Back when Anna was just a toddler. Ethan leaned in. Do you know anyone named TW? She furrowed her brow. Twev? Then slowly, her eyes widened. You don't mean Travis West? Who is that? He was, well, that's complicated. He and Monique, Anna's mother, they dated before Darnell. Briefly. He vanished not long after Anna was born. Vanished? He just left. No contact. Rumor was, he had some trouble with the law. Drugs, theft. She never talked about him again. Said he wasn't worth remembering. Ethan felt a chill move through him. Is there a chance he could try to come back? Mrs. Jenkins shrugged. Not unless he thinks he's owed something. Back at the estate, Ethan barely made it through the door before his phone rang. It was Lawrence. I got your TW. Travis West? Bingo. He was never legally listed on Anna's birth certificate. But there's circumstantial evidence he might be her biological father. Hospital bills, timeline, even an old visitation dispute that never made it to court. Ethan froze. Is he alive? Oh, he's more than alive. He's in Chicago, just got out of state prison 5 months ago. He's got ties to a fringe parental rights group, which means he could be the one leaving letters. Wouldn't rule it out. He hasn't filed anything officially. Yet, Ethan looked out the window, eyes narrowing on the long stretch of driveway cloaked in snow. Keep eyes on him, he said. If he tries anything, I want to know before it happens. He hung up, heart pounding. Just when he thought the storm had passed, another shadow threatened to rise. That night, as Ethan tucked Anna into bed, she looked up at him with sleepy eyes. Are you okay? She asked. Yeah, he lied. You look like you're holding your breath. Ethan sat beside her. Sometimes grown-ups get worried too. About me? About keeping you safe. Anna took his hand and squeezed it. You already do, he smiled, brushing a curl from her forehead. Do you want to hear a story? She nodded. So he told her one about a lion who found a wounded bird, and how he sheltered her through a storm, even when the world told him it was dangerous. He made up the ending as he went. But in the final lines, the lion stood in front of the nest and growled at the sky. If the storm wants her, it'll have to go through me. When Anna finally drifted to sleep, Ethan sat there longer than he needed to, because he knew now this wasn't just about courtrooms and custody papers. It was about blood, secrets, and a man in the shadows who may believe that Anna still belonged to him. But Ethan had already made his vow. And no one, no ghost from the past, no coward in the dark was going to take her away. Snow fell heavy that morning, muffling the world in quiet as if the sky itself was holding its breath. Inside the Whitmore estate, the warmth of the fireplace could not chase away the unease that had settled in Ethan's chest. The name Travis West kept replaying in his mind, like a ticking clock. He hadn't told Anna about him yet. There were some ghosts too dangerous to name aloud. Ethan stood in his study, eyes locked on the security feed. The gates were closed, the perimeter sensors still. Yet the threat didn't feel far. It felt near, watching. The phone rang. Lawrence. He's been seen near a community center on the south side, Lawrence reported, working with a group called Fathers for Justice. They're loud, mostly harmless, except Travis isn't like the rest. What do you mean? He filed an intent to petition this morning. No legal weight yet, but it's the first step. He's trying to claim biological parenthood. He's pushing the restoration of paternal rights angle. Ethan rubbed his temple. Without DNA? He's asking the court to mandate a test. Ethan's blood chilled. Can he win? Unlikely. The system doesn't favor deadbeat dads popping out of prison with no legal record of involvement. But the optics, especially if he plays the race card, could get messy. There it was, the real threat. Not legality, but narrative. Travis didn't need to be right. He just needed to sow enough doubt. Prepare a full opposition, Ethan said. Character records, his criminal background, abandonment history, everything. Already on it. That evening, Ruth noticed Ethan wasn't eating. She set down her fork and folded her arms. You're carrying something. Ethan met her eyes. Travis West. Anna's biological father. He's in town. Ruth's face darkened. That dog? You knew him? She nodded slowly. I knew of him. Monique never said much. But I remember. When she came in with bruises one time. said it was an accident. I didn't believe her. She cut ties fast after Anna was born. She never told me that. She wouldn't. She didn't want pity. And she didn't want Anna growing up knowing her father was a violent coward. Ethan felt the room spin, the weight of that knowledge settling over him like fresh snow. He's trying to get custody, Ruth snorted. The only thing he ever parented was trouble. They sat in silence for a moment, the sound of Anna's laughter drifting down from upstairs as she played with justice. Then Ruth said softly, "She calls you Dad, Ethan. That's not something you earn with blood. That's something you earn with presence." The next day, the court served notice. Travis's petition for paternity testing had been accepted. It wasn't a ruling yet, but it meant Ethan had to respond. Legally. Officially. He met with Lawrence in person this time, seated across a mahogany table littered with files, affidavits, and photographs. "We need to be ahead of this," Lawrence said. "Public narrative matters. Travis might not have a chance in court. But if this gets to the press, white billionaire takes black man's child, you'll be painted as the villain in under a minute." Ethan clenched his jaw. "This isn't about color. It's about safety. Stability. You know that. I know that. But public opinion? That's a different battlefield." Ethan leaned back, exhaling hard. "So what's our move?" Lawrence slid a document forward. "We preempt. File a motion to terminate any potential paternal rights based on abandonment, endangerment, and failure to support. We attach everything. Travis's rap sheet, his prison record, lack of involvement, and we include statements from people who knew Monique. I'll talk to Mrs. Jenkins." "Good. And Ethan, there's one more thing. If it comes down to a DNA test and he's the biological father, it doesn't automatically grant him custody, but it complicates things." Ethan didn't flinch. He may have helped create her, but he didn't raise her. He didn't hold her through nightmares. He didn't show up. Lawrence nodded. "Then let's show the court who did." That night, Ethan sat with Anna in the reading nook, pretending to flip through a picture book, though he hadn't read a single word. She was curled against him, eyelids heavy with sleep. "Dad?" she murmured. "Yeah? What does real dad mean?" Ethan froze. "Why do you ask that? Some kid at school said I didn't have a real dad." "He said you're just pretending." Ethan placed the book down and turned to her. "Anna, do you know what makes someone a real dad?" She shook her head. "Showing up," he said. "Being there, protecting you, loving you, no matter what. Then you're real," she said softly, and closed her eyes. Ethan sat there in silence long after she fell asleep. The court date came faster than expected. Travis showed up in a wrinkled suit and a cocky smile. He brought supporters with signs, "Fathers have rights too," and "Reunite black families." Ethan didn't react. He walked in with Ruth on one side and Anna's social worker on the other. Calm, grounded. Inside the courtroom, Lawrence led the charge. He presented a 72-page filing of evidence. Travis's criminal past, years of silence, proof he'd known about Anna's existence and chosen not to act. Then came the witnesses. Mrs. Jenkins spoke first. "I saw Monique cry after she cut Travis out of her life," she told the judge. "She did it to protect her daughter. He was violent. He drank. She was terrified of what he might become." Ruth spoke next. "Anna had nightmares for weeks after Monique died. Ethan stayed up every night with her. Every night. He never let go." Finally, Ethan took the stand. He told the truth. About Sarah. About losing his daughter. About the promise he made to a woman he didn't owe anything to but who trusted him with everything. "She didn't ask me to raise Anna because I was rich," he said. "She asked me because she saw how I loved my daughter. Because she knew I wouldn't leave Anna behind." Travis stood, uninvited. "I am her blood," he barked. "That counts for something." Judge Kinsey narrowed her eyes. "It counts, Mr. West, but not for everything." She turned back to Ethan. "You may step down, Mr. Whitmore." An hour later, the judge delivered her decision. The court finds no evidence that Mr. West ever acted in the best interests of the child. Biological connection, in absence of action or intent. does not equate to parenthood. The petition for paternity-based custodial rights is denied. Ethan closed his eyes. It was over. As they walked out of the courthouse, Ruth grinned. You didn't just win a case today. You protected a legacy. Ethan nodded. Anna ran to him, throwing her arms around his waist. Can we go get pancakes now? He laughed. You just read my mind, because after all the courts and papers and shadows of the past, it came down to this. He was her father, and that truth didn't need blood to prove it. 2 weeks had passed since the courtroom decision, and the snow in Chicago had begun to melt, revealing the cracked sidewalks and salted driveways beneath. Life inside the Whitmore estate had settled into a calm rhythm, one that tasted of Saturday morning pancakes, Ruth's gospel humming in the kitchen, and Anna's crayons scattered across every available surface. But peace, Ethan had learned, was a fragile thing, and sometimes it was only the silence before the next storm. Ethan stood in his study, sorting through the last of the legal documents that Lawrence had forwarded, a symbolic gesture of closure. The court had ruled definitively in his favor, and Travis West was legally barred from making any further claims without new evidence. But one detail still bothered him. A quiet itch in the back of his mind. Travis had shouted in court, "You don't know what she island." What did that mean? He hadn't elaborated. The judge had shut him down before he could say more. And since then, not a word. Not to the press. Not online. Not in any formal appeal. Silence. Ethan picked up his phone and called Lawrence. "I need to see him." Lawrence paused on the other end. "Travis?" "Yeah, one conversation. Off the record." "Ethan, you already won." "I'm not looking for a fight. I'm looking for answers." Lawrence sighed. "He's in holding for a parole violation. You can't meet without clearance." "Then get me clearance." That afternoon, Ethan drove himself to the Cook County Detention Center. No driver, no press, just him, in a dark overcoat, holding nothing but a notepad and a pen. He passed through metal detectors, was processed at the front desk, and was finally led down a sterile hallway to a small visitation room with 2 chairs and a sheet of bulletproof glass. Travis West was already seated. He looked thinner, his beard scruffy, eyes bloodshot. But his posture was casual, leaned back, arms crossed, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. "Well," Travis said as Ethan took a seat on the other side of the glass. "Didn't think you'd come." Ethan picked up the phone receiver. "I'm not here to fight," he said. "Good. You'd los. I want to know what you meant," Ethan continued. "You don't know what she island." "What did that mean?" Travis's smirk deepened. "You think you've got it all figured out. Got your little perfect life, your dead daughter's empty room now filled again. But Anna, she's not just some sad story you rescued. I never said she was. She was born into something, man. Something dark." Ethan narrowed his eyes. "Explain." Travis leaned forward, voice lowering. "Monique was running, not just from me, from the people we used to run with. Gangs, debts, drugs, you name it. She tried to clean up for the kid, but that kind of life doesn't just disappear. She told me you hit her." Travis didn't deny it. "Yeah, I did. I was high. I was stupid. And I lost everything because of it, but I never stopped watching. I knew Anna was mine. But when Monique disappeared into the suburbs, started pretending she was someone else, I couldn't follow. You had years to try." "I did try," Travis hissed, "but nobody wants to listen to a felon, especially when the mother is painting you as a monster. I never had a chance." Ethan said nothing. Travis's tone shifted. "There's a man named Victor Reyes. He used to run with us. Monique owed him money. Big money. She got out before it got bad, but I wouldn't be surprised if he knows Anna exists." "Why does that matter now?" Travis leaned in close to the glass, eyes cold. "Because Reyes doesn't forget. If she ever told him that Anna was his leverage, he'll come." Ethan felt the weight in his chest return. "Are you saying she was threatened?" "I'm saying she was afraid, and not of me." Ethan stared at him for a long moment. "Why tell me this?" "Because for all your money, all your lawyers, you don't know what's coming. And whether I like you or not, She's still my blood. Ethan hung up the phone and stood. Blood means nothing if you never protected her. He turned and walked out, not waiting for a reply. Back at the estate, Anna was on the porch building a snowman with Ruth, laughing as they gave it a crooked carrot nose and mismatched button eyes. Ethan stood watching for a moment, heart full of a protective heat, but his mind was elsewhere now. Victor Reyes. It wasn't a name he recognized, but he would soon. He called Lawrence again. Run everything on a Victor Reyes. Connections to Monique, gang affiliations, financial disputes. I need to know if he's real. Lawrence didn't hesitate. You got it. That night, as Anna slept and the snowman stood watch under the porch light, Ethan opened the green tin box again. This time, he sifted deeper through old receipts. A church program from Monique's funeral, and a folded letter Anna had written in crayon. Dear Mama, I miss you. But I feel safe now. Safe. But was she really? Ethan had built his world around that promise. That here, inside these gates, she was untouchable. But if Travis was telling the truth, if Monique had run from more than just a bad relationship, then maybe Ethan hadn't inherited a daughter. Maybe he had inherited a target. He picked up the phone once more, this time calling someone he hadn't spoken to in over a year. Jacob, I need private security. Discreet. Background checks. Surveillance. You expecting trouble? I'm expecting the past. The next morning, Ethan sat Anna down at the kitchen table over hot chocolate and banana muffins. Do you remember your mom talking about anyone named Victor? He asked gently. Anna frowned. I think so. A man from a long time ago. Mama didn't like him. What did she say about him? She said he was mean. He used to come to the window. One time she cried after he left. Ethan's throat tightened. Did he ever talk to you? But I remember his eyes. They were dark, like empty. Ethan reached across the table and held her hand. I promise you, if that man ever comes near you, I'll be standing between you and him, always. Anna didn't speak. She just nodded and leaned into his chest, small and warm and trusting. It wasn't just about courtrooms anymore. It was about ghosts. And closing doors they didn't even know were open. But Ethan was ready, because no man alive or dead, blood or not, was going to take her away. 3 days after the visit to Travis, the results from Lawrence's investigation arrived in a slim manila envelope. Ethan sat alone in his study, the only light coming from the banker's lamp on his desk. Outside, wind dragged skeletal branches against the window like the fingers of ghosts. He broke the seal on the envelope slowly, bracing himself. Victor Reyes. Real name: Victor Manuel Reyes. Age: 49. Known affiliate of the South Loop Syndicate during the late 92nd. Multiple arrests, racketeering, extortion, assault, never convicted. Known for operating under the radar loan rackets, targeting vulnerable women with no legal recourse. Disappeared from public records around 2012. Resurfaced quietly in Detroit, under a new alias, Vincent Ray. At the bottom of the file was a grainy photo of Victor, lean and sharp-eyed, standing beside a black SUV. There was something predatory about his posture, something cold. Ethan had seen that kind of man before, in boardrooms with million-dollar smiles that hid a heart full of rot. But Victor didn't wear a mask. His face told you the truth. He had nothing to lose. Ethan picked up the phone. Lawrence. This man is a live wire. I want to know who he talks to, what car he drives, what side of the bed he sleeps on. Lawrence sighed. Already ahead of you. We've got eyes on him in Detroit. No known moves toward Chicago yet. But Ethan, I don't think he's forgotten. Neither have I. Ethan hung up and looked out the window. Snow had started falling again, quiet and relentless. The next day, Anna came home from school with a drawing of a dragon. She beamed as she handed it to Ethan, who was waiting on the porch with a mug of hot cider. This is you, she said. You're the dragon. He smiled, studying the big red wings and fierce eyes. I like it. You have fire, she said proudly. So no one can hurt me. His throat tightened. That's right. No one will. But even as he held her close, he felt that tremor in the air. A shift. As if something was watching from beyond the trees. Later that evening, the estate's head of private security, Jacob Wyatt, arrived for an in-person briefing. Jacob was ex-military, lean and sharp-eyed, with a voice like gravel and the instincts of a bloodhound. Perimeter's clear. Cameras are live. Your staff's been briefed on new access codes, and we've got a rotating watch at the gate 24/7, he reported. Do you believe Victor is a threat? Ethan asked. Jacob didn't hesitate. Yes. He doesn't make loud moves. He waits. Watches. And when he hits, it's clean. Quiet. Any signs of contact? Jacob pulled out a tablet and slid it across the table. Last night, this man, one of Reyes's known associates, was seen loitering 2 blocks from Anna's school. Didn't approach, but lingered long enough to make it suspicious. Ethan clenched his fists. What do you want to do? Jacob asked. Put a man on her school. Someone invisible. If this guy even blinks in her direction again, I want to know his grandmother's middle name. You got it. And Jacob? Yeah? If it comes down to it. I won't wait for the law. Jacob gave a grim nod. Understood. The following week, Ethan visited Mrs. Jenkins at the community center under the guise of donating art supplies. But as they stood in the storeroom surrounded by glitter and paintbrushes, his tone turned serious. Do you remember Victor Reyes? He asked quietly. Mrs. Jenkins paled. How do you know that name? He may be watching Anna. Her voice dropped. Monique was terrified of him. He loaned her money back when she was sick. Told her it was a gift. But when she tried to walk away, he started showing up at the clinic. Leaving messages. Threats. She never told the police. Why not? She was afraid he'd hurt Anna. Said she'd rather disappear than let that man near her baby. Ethan swallowed hard. Do you know if he ever made contact with Anna directly? Number Monique kept her hidden. Changed addresses twice. Used a P.O. box for everything. That's why she never left a will. She didn't want any paper trail. Ethan left the center more convinced than ever. This wasn't just a loose end. This was unfinished business. And Anna was in the middle. 2 nights later, a strange car appeared outside the estate. It didn't stop, didn't pull into the driveway, just slowed, coasted, then disappeared into the night. The next morning, Jacob handed Ethan a still image from the camera feed. A silver sedan. Tinted windows, out-of-state plates, registered to no one. It was a message. That same afternoon, Anna's school principal called. There was a man waiting near the south exit after dismissal. Tall, wearing a hooded jacket. One of our aides saw him watching the children. When approached, he left without a word. Ethan was there in 15 minutes. He walked the grounds with the principal, studied the security footage, and then knelt beside Anna as she sat in the counselor's office. Did anyone talk to you today? He asked gently. She shook her head. Number. But I saw a man by the fence. He didn't smile. Ethan fought to keep his expression calm. You're safe, he said. We're going to keep it that way. That evening, he met with Jacob again. Time to escalate, Ethan said. Arm the perimeter, reinforce the staff, and I want facial recognition scans on every visitor within 3 blocks. Jacob nodded. I'll triple the patrols. I want to send a message, Ethan said, his voice low. If they're watching us, they need to know we're watching back. That night, as Anna slept, Ethan stood alone in the snow-covered garden, staring into the trees beyond the gate. The cold bit into his skin, but he didn't move. He remembered something Travis had said behind the glass. She's not just a little girl, she's a doorway. At the time, it had sounded like nonsense. Now it felt like prophecy. Ethan whispered into the darkness, as if daring the shadows to answer, whatever you think you're coming for, you've already lost. The wind howled in reply, and somewhere beyond the trees, something watched, waiting. But so was he. The following day, Jacob pulled Ethan aside. We got something else. A contact at the CPD leaked a report. Reyes has been making cash drops to a woman early 40s, Latina, goes by Maribel. She's known for laundering money through daycare fronts. May, what does that have to do with us? She used to work at the same church Monique attended during her cancer treatments. My guess? She knew the family. Maybe more. Ethan's mind raced. If Reyes was using people Monique trusted to keep tabs on her, he could have been closer than we thought. Closer to Anna. Want us to bring her in? Ethan hesitated. Not yet. Let's talk first. That evening, Ethan and Jacob drove to a modest home in Little Village. A worn sign out front read Pequeños Milagros Daycare, Learning Center. Maribel opened the door cautiously, her eyes narrowing at the two men on her porch. You're not here to enroll a kid, are you? Ethan stepped forward. We need to talk. It's about Victor Reyes. Her face paled. I don't know that man. Don't lie, Jacob warned. Maribel glanced around, then ushered them inside quickly. I haven't seen him in months, she whispered once the door closed. He used to drop by, leave money, ask questions, always about Monique, and then later, about the girl. Why? Ethan asked. I don't know. He never told me. Just said he needed to keep track. Make sure the girl didn't disappear. Did Monique know you were working with him? Maribel shook her head. If she had, she would have killed me. She thought she was hiding Anna, thought she had slipped away. Ethan leaned in. Then why help him? Maribel's eyes filled with tears. He threatened my grandson. Jacob's voice was hard. Where is he now? No idea. But he called me last week. Said the time was coming. Said, the dragon can't protect her forever. Ethan froze. The dragon. Anna's drawing. The nickname. It wasn't just a metaphor. Victor knew. Back at the estate, Ethan couldn't sleep. He paced the hallway, checking every lock, every window. He even stood at Anna's doorway, watching the slow rise and fall of her chest. The idea that someone like Victor might ever be near her filled him with a rage so white-hot it scared him. Downstairs, Jacob was reviewing the new footage. Outside, guards patrolled in coordinated shifts. Floodlights swept the trees. Still, Ethan felt something creeping closer. Not just danger, history. And maybe, in the shadows of Monique's past, something darker waited. A secret that hadn't yet been told. Something Victor thought was worth hunting down. Ethan poured another drink and stared out into the snow. He wouldn't wait for the wolf to knock again. Next time, he'd meet it at the gate with fire. 2 days after the encounter with Maribel, the temperature dropped sharply. The lake wind blew hard against the Whitmore estate, rattling shutters and bending the skeletal trees like they were bowing to something more powerful. The air had a taste of steel, cold, metallic, warning. Inside the estate, Ethan met with Lawrence and Jacob in the war room. They'd set up maps, photos, reports, and live surveillance footage now covered every available surface. But despite the layers of planning and protection, something gnawed at Ethan's gut. We're missing a piece, he said, eyes fixed on the photo of Victor Reyes at the church. He didn't just want to keep tabs, he was waiting. Waiting for what? Lawrence asked. Jacob crossed his arms. A trigger, maybe, something to bring him out of the shadows. Ethan tapped the image. Then maybe it's time we pull that trigger ourselves. Lawrence frowned. What do you mean? We make it known publicly that Anna is now under permanent legal guardianship. We do a press release. Get it in the papers. Let him see that he's run out of time. Jacob nodded slowly. Force his hand, but, Lawrence warned, you better be ready for what comes after. I am, Ethan said. This ends on our terms, not his. The next morning, the headline ran in the Chicago Tribune. Billionaire Ethan Whitmore officially adopts daughter of late Monique West. Accompanied by a photograph of Ethan and Anna, smiling in front of the estate. It was more than a legal announcement, it was bait. Within hours, calls flooded in. Some from supporters, some from reporters, and one from an unknown number was just a whisper. You think you've won, but you don't even know what you're holding. Click. The line went dead. Jacob traced the number it pinged off a burner cell tower in Gary, Indiana. Reyes, Jacob said. He's reacting. That's a good sign. Ethan exhaled. Let's keep him reacting. That night, Ethan sat down with Ruth in the den. She was knitting a scarf, the needles clicking gently as he relayed everything: Maribel's confession, the surveillance, the threats. When he was done, she set her knitting aside. You know, she said slowly, there's something Monique told me once. It never made sense to me until now. What was it? She said. If anything happens to me, Don't let them find her. I thought she meant you know who Travis. But maybe it wasn't just him. Ethan leaned forward. Them? She never said names. But she once told me that Anna was more important than anyone realized. I figured it was just a mother's pride. But now, she knew they were watching. Ruth nodded. And she was scared of more than just being alone. Later that week, a breakthrough came from Lawrence's team. A sealed court document dated 7 years prior showed that Monique had been listed as a witness in a federal racketeering investigation. The target? Victor Reyes. She had agreed to testify. Then, days before the trial, she vanished from the system. No explanation, no follow-up. Case dropped. Reyes walked free. She turned, Lawrence said, sliding the papers across Ethan's desk. Then she disappeared. May. She didn't disappear, Ethan said. She ran. And she hid Anna, Lawrence nodded. Which means Reyes has more reason than ever to come after her. Ethan stood, hands gripping the edge of the desk. She wasn't just his leverage. She was his liability, Jacob said quietly. So now we know what he wants to erase her. To clean up loose ends. Ethan's voice hardened. Then we make it impossible. That night, Ethan recorded a video in his study. No PR team. No script, just him, sitting in front of the camera, looking straight ahead. My name is Ethan Whitmore, he began. You may know me from headlines or business journals. But what you probably don't know is this. I'm a father. And my daughter's name is Anna. She is bright, kind, and full of more courage than most men I've met in my life. And right now, someone is trying to erase her. He paused. I want this message to be seen by one person in particular, Victor Reyes. You know what you've done. You know why Monique ran. And I know who you are. You threatened her. And now you're threatening her daughter. He leaned forward. If you think I'm afraid of you, you're wrong. If you think I'll give her up, you're dead wrong. You've spent your life hiding behind shadows, behind fear. But I don't fear you, Reyes. I pity you. He ended the recording with one final line. If you want to come, then come. But know this, you're walking into a fire. He posted the video to every platform. Within hours, it had been shared thousands of times. And Victor saw it. The next day, a car exploded 3 blocks from Anna's school. No injuries, no fatalities. But it was close enough. Jacob stormed into the estate with fire in his eyes. That was a warning. I know, Ethan said, and now so is this. He held up a fresh court summons. Filed that morning naming Victor Reyes as a suspect in a federal case connected to witness intimidation and child endangerment. Lawrence had pulled strings. The feds were officially watching now, and they weren't alone. Later that night, as Ethan tucked Anna into bed, she looked up with wide, tired eyes. Why are people so mean, Dad? He paused. Sometimes, people get so used to living in the dark, they forget there's any light left. And when they see someone full of light like you, it scares them. Are you scared? He smiled softly. Never. Not when I have you. She reached for his hand. Then don't let go. I won't, he said. Not ever. As he turned off the lights and stepped into the hallway, he didn't see the shadow watching from the trees beyond the gate. But he felt it, and so did the fire in his chest. This wasn't just a fight anymore. It was war. Chicago lay under a silent blanket of snow, thick and heavy as though the city itself were holding its breath. The streets near the Whitmore estate were unusually empty, the bitter cold acting as a natural barrier, but Ethan knew better. This stillness wasn't peace. It was the pause before the storm. At 3 a.m., Jacob burst into the study, adrenaline written all over his face. They breached the perimeter. Ethan stood up so fast his chair toppled. Where? West Side fence. 2 men dressed in black, no IDs. One had a silencer, the other a short-range scrambler. My team disabled them before they got to the house. But they weren't amateurs. Alive? One's in holding, the other's unconscious. No cell phones, no names, just cash and burner gear. Ethan's jaw tightened. He's escalating. Jacob nodded grimly. This isn't intimidation anymore. It's an operation. By morning, the house was a fortress. Armed guards rotated shifts. Every entrance was double-locked, every window alarmed. Anna remained unaware, at least, on the surface. But Ethan noticed the way she clutched her stuffed rabbit tighter at night. She wasn't asking questions, but her silence said plenty. Later that day, Lawrence arrived with an unmarked folder. "You're not going to believe this," he said, pulling out a mugshot. "One of the men your team caught? He used to work private security for a pharmaceutical company. Guess who their legal representative was 8 years ago?" Ethan didn't have to guess. "Victor," Lawrence nodded. "We've got a line now, not just rumors. Employment records, bank transfers. This man was on Reyes's payroll under a shell firm. We flip him, we can bring Reyes down." "What does he want with Anna?" Ethan asked again. "It can't just be revenge." Lawrence hesitated, then laid a second document on the desk. "We found a sealed juvenile file. Monique filed it under an alias in Michigan shortly after Anna was born. She had a DNA test done." Ethan narrowed his eyes. "And?" The father listed wasn't Travis. There was a long, brittle silence. "Victor?" Ethan asked. "No," Lawrence said. "It was someone else entirely, but the lab technician who handled the case disappeared 6 months later. The records were sealed by court order, so Victor found out, but didn't know the full truth." Lawrence nodded. "Which makes Anna not just leverage. She's a secret one he can't afford to be exposed. If the wrong people find out she exists, Reyes loses everything." Ethan felt a chill crawl up his spine. "Then we don't just protect her. We protect the truth." At sundown, Jacob brought Ethan to the estate's secure holding room converted from an old wine cellar, now reinforced with steel and soundproofed. The man they had caught mid-42nd, lean, a tattoo of a serpent on his neck, sat handcuffed at the center table. His eyes were calm, too calm. Ethan sat across from him. "What's your name?" The man didn't answer. "Who sent you?" Silence. Ethan leaned in. "Listen, I'm not the police. I'm not interested in trials or lawyers. But I am a father, and if you think I'll let anything happen to that girl, you've underestimated me." The man finally smirked. "You don't know what you've got in your house. Then tell me, you think this is about money? Reyes doesn't need money. He needs control. Power. That girl, she's tied to a past he buried years ago. If she lives, he burns." Ethan's voice dropped. "Then let him burn." The man's smile faded. "He'll never stop. Neither will I." That night, Ethan stood on the balcony outside his bedroom, overlooking the snowy yard. Anna's window glowed softly across the courtyard. She was asleep. Safe for now. But every breath he took carried the weight of a deeper truth. There was more to Monique's past than even he knew. He pulled out the last item from the tin box, something he hadn't looked at yet. A small cassette tape, labeled only, "For Anna. If I'm gone." Ruth helped him find an old player in the basement. As the tape clicked to life, Monique's voice filled the room, soft, fragile, determined. "Anna, baby, if you're hearing this, I'm sorry. I wanted to be there for your first day of school, your first heartbreak, everything. But if this tape is playing, then I'm not, and that means someone's looking for you." Ethan sat down slowly, hands trembling. "I did something once. I saw something I shouldn't have. And for a long time, I thought I could outrun it. But you can't outrun men like Victor. You can only delay them. You are not his. You never were. You're something better, stronger. Don't let them tell you who you are. Ethan, if you're hearing this, thank you. Protect her. With everything you have." The tape clicked off. Jacob, standing nearby, said nothing. He didn't have to. The air between them had changed. This wasn't just a case anymore. It was a promise. The next morning, Ethan called a press conference. Not about Anna, not about guardianship, but about the corruption that had buried Monique's case all those years ago. He stood on the steps of City Hall, flanked by Ruth, Lawrence, and Jacob. "There are people in this city who have used fear as currency," he began. "They silence witnesses, erase lives, and walk free while good people run for their safety. That ends now. I have evidence, I have names, and I have a daughter who deserves a future. He raised a folder. This is the truth, and I'm no longer afraid to speak it. The crowd buzzed. Cameras flashed, but far away, in the quiet halls of a mansion in Detroit, Victor Reyes watched the broadcast on a private screen. He didn't blink. He just whispered, "So be it." Then he picked up his phone. It's time. The snowstorm arrived that evening like an omen, thick, fast, and without apology. By dusk, the city of Chicago was submerged in white, and visibility around the Whitmore estate was down to just a few feet. But inside, the household was a different storm altogether. Guards doubled up, cameras refreshed every 30 seconds. The windows had been reinforced, and all gates were sealed. Ethan stood in the surveillance room beside Jacob, eyes scanning the overlapping feeds. His jaw tightened as he spoke. He won't wait any longer. That press conference forced his hand. Jacob nodded. He's out of time. That makes him reckless. Or worse, Ethan murmured. Desperate. Just then, Lawrence rushed in, snow still clinging to the shoulders of his coat. We got a break, he said, pulling out a document. One of Reyes's former cleaners came forward after seeing your speech. A woman named Charlene Dent. She used to handle logistics for his people renting safe houses, hiding documents. What did she say? Ethan asked. Lawrence handed him a folder. Inside were grainy photos of a warehouse on the south side abandoned on paper, but in reality, buzzing with activity. Arms deals, record laundering, even a private server hub. She said Reyes has been storing something there, something he never let anyone near. Blueprints, old case files. Names. Charlene swears there's evidence connecting him to Monique's disappearance and the shutdown of the original federal case. We raid it tonight, Ethan said without hesitation. Jacob frowned. In this storm, he's already moving. We either cut the head off now, or he slithers out of reach again. Jacob gave a sharp nod. I'll get the team. Ethan kissed Anna's forehead as she slept, brushing a curl away from her cheek. Ruth stood in the hallway, concern etched across her face. You shouldn't go alone, she whispered. I'm not, Ethan replied, but I have to go. She'll ask where you are in the morning. Ethan paused. Tell her the truth. That I went to protect her. Outside, black SUVs waited with engines running hot against the snow. Ethan climbed into the lead vehicle with Jacob and two armed security men. They moved in a tight convoy through the whiteout, headlights cutting a narrow tunnel through the storm. As they approached the warehouse, the street was empty, too empty. Jacob muttered, "This doesn't feel right." They parked 3 blocks away and continued on foot, the snow crunching beneath their boots. The warehouse loomed like a dark cathedral, half buried in drifts. The loading dock door was ajar. Inside it was quiet, too quiet. They moved room by room, no guards, no signs of recent movement, just stacks of crates, locked drawers, and old filing cabinets covered in dust. Then, in the server room, they found it. A safe, built into the concrete wall, its keypad blinking red. Jacob went to work immediately. Give me 2 minutes. Ethan stood guard near the door, nerves fraying with each second. But just as Jacob cracked the safe, a voice echoed from the dark corner of the room. I wouldn't do that if I were you. Everyone froze. Victor Reyes stepped from the shadows, dressed in a black coat, gloved hands empty, but posture poised like a coiled snake. Behind him, 2 more men appeared armed, silent. How long have you been waiting? Ethan asked coldly. Victor smiled. Long enough to watch you make your move. You're brave, Whitmore. I'll give you that. You're finished, Ethan replied. We have your files, witnesses, we know everything. Victor chuckled. You think I kept anything that mattered in there? That's a decoy. Whitmore. A little insurance for nights, just like this one. Jacob glanced at the now open safe. Empty. I don't need the files, Ethan said. I have Anna. Victor's smile faded. That girl doesn't belong to you. She never belonged to you, Ethan snapped. Victor stepped forward, his voice dropping. You have no idea what you're involved in. That child. She isn't just a threat to me. She's a threat to them. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Who is them? Victor paused, then said softly, the same people who made Monique disappear. The same ones who protected me. She crossed a line. She had something she wasn't supposed to have. What? Victor laughed, cold and hollow. You really think this is about revenge? No, Whitmore. This is cleanup. You're just collateral. Without warning, gunfire erupted from the hallway. Jacob shoved Ethan down as bullets sprayed the server room wall. The security men returned fire, and chaos exploded in the warehouse. Ethan pulled his weapon and covered the left flank, heart pounding as the storm outside howled like a second war. One of Victor's men went down. The other was wounded, crawling. But Victor was gone, vanished into the maze of the warehouse. Don't let him escape, Ethan yelled. Jacob and the guards spread out, chasing shadows between crates and metal shelves. Ethan followed the blood trail into the loading bay, where a side door hung open, snow whipping in. He stepped out just in time to see Victor stumbling toward a black SUV, wounded but still moving. Ethan raised his gun. Stop! Victor turned slowly, hands up. You won't shoot, he said. You're a father now. Fathers don't kill in front of their daughters. Ethan's grip tightened. No, but they protect. Then he fired. The bullet struck Victor in the shoulder, spinning him to the ground. He screamed, dropping his weapon as guards swarmed him. Jacob arrived seconds later, breathless. We got him. Ethan stood over Victor, staring down at the man who had haunted Monique's final years, who had hunted Anna like prey. It's over, he said. Victor coughed, blood at the corner of his mouth. Not for her, you'll see. They dragged him away in handcuffs. Ethan watched until the black SUV disappeared into the storm. Then he whispered to himself, yes, for her, it is over. But in the quiet that followed, he wasn't sure he believed it. Not yet. Not completely. One final shadow still lingered. And whatever it was waiting. The storm passed by dawn, leaving behind a city blanketed in silence. Snow crusted over rooftops and softened the chaos of the night before, as if nature itself wanted to erase the violence. But inside the Whitmore estate, not everything had quieted. Ethan sat at the edge of Anna's bed, watching her sleep. Her little hand still clutched her rabbit. But her brow was furrowed, her dreams clearly unsettled. He hadn't told her what happened. Not yet. But he knew the day was coming when he would have to. Some truths, no matter how painful, had to be passed down not as burdens, but as shields. Behind him, Ruth entered quietly with a fresh mug of coffee. You didn't sleep again. Ethan shook his head. I couldn't. Every time I close my eyes, I see his face, Reyes lying there in the snow, bleeding and still smiling. Like he knew something I didn't. He did, Ruth said softly. People like him always think they know how the story ends, that they're the authors. But you changed that. Ethan looked down. I don't know if I did. Not really. He said this wasn't just about him, that there were others. There are always others, she replied. But that doesn't mean we stop fighting. Later that morning, Jacob arrived with news. Victor Reyes was officially in federal custody. Denied bail. The feds had moved fast, raiding his known properties, seizing assets, flipping low-level associates. Charges were stacking: racketeering, witness intimidation, attempted abduction, conspiracy. But the biggest breakthrough came not from the files they recovered, but from Victor's own mouth. He talked? Ethan asked. Jacob nodded. In exchange for protection, claimed he had documents implicating members of a shadow network tied to offshore firms, political donations, private security outfits. It's bigger than we thought. Ethan rubbed his temples. He was a cog. A loud, dangerous one, but not the machine. Still, with his cooperation, the machine's exposed, Jacob said. And the DOJ is moving. Quietly, but fast. And Anna? She's safe. For now. Ethan looked out the window toward the snowy garden, where Anna had once tried to build a snowman. Safe isn't enough. I want her to be free. That afternoon, Lawrence arrived with a different kind of document. a thick envelope bearing the official seal of the state of Illinois. "It's done," he said with a smile. "The adoption is finalized, legally, permanently. You're now her father in every way the law allows." Ethan took the papers with shaking hands. He wasn't a man prone to tears, but this time, they came quietly, just a shimmer in his eyes as he looked over the words. Ethan James Whitmore, legal guardian and adoptive father of Anna Rose West. "She's mine," he whispered. "No." Ruth corrected gently, standing beside him. "You're hers." That evening, as the sun broke through the clouds for the first time in days, Ethan took Anna to the conservatory. It had been weeks since they'd gone there together. Now, the glass ceiling sparkled with melting snow, and the flowers, somehow resilient through the winter, had begun to bloom again. Anna ran ahead, her laughter echoing off the walls. She twirled among the orchids, a crown of tulips in her hair crafted hastily by Ruth just before dinner. She looked brighter, lighter. The fear in her eyes had softened, replaced by something Ethan hadn't seen in a long time. Peace. He sat on the stone bench where Monique once used to read, and Anna plopped down beside him. "Are the bad people gone now?" she asked. He hesitated. "Some of them. Will they come back?" He didn't lie. "Maybe. But if they do, we'll be ready." She nodded thoughtfully, then reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded paper. "What's that?" he asked. "It's a drawing. I made it for you." She unfolded it. A crayon sketch, crude but powerful. Ethan standing beside Anna, both of them holding swords, facing a dark shape labeled Shadow. Behind them stood Monique, with wings like an angel, smiling. "I like how you gave me a sword," Ethan said with a grin. "You already have one," she replied confidently. "It's in here." She pointed to his chest, and just like that, his heart cracked wide open. The final step came quietly, without sirens or cameras. Lawrence arranged a private meeting with the head of the federal task force overseeing Reyes's case. They discussed contingencies, long-term protections, and Ethan's terms. He made it clear, if Anna's name or location ever leaked, there would be consequences. "She's not leverage," Ethan said firmly. "She's a child, one who deserves to live, not hide." The agent nodded. "We'll keep it airtight." And with that, the war ended. Or at least, the first one. Weeks passed. The snow melted. Spring came early that year. Anna started at a new school. Small, private, surrounded by nature and kind teachers. She made friends. She played. She laughed louder each day. Ethan, meanwhile, scaled back from public life, sold off several assets, focused on building a foundation in Monique's name dedicated to protecting vulnerable children, especially those caught in legal gray zones. He called it the Rose Fund. The first child it helped was Anna. The second was a boy from Louisiana whose mother had disappeared under similar circumstances. The third was a girl in Detroit whose guardian was fighting for custody against powerful men. And so it went. Not just justice. Legacy. One evening, months after it all ended, Ethan sat in the garden with Anna on his lap. They watched fireflies dance in the dusk. She was humming something, soft and wordless. "Dad?" she said. "Yes? Do you think Mom can see us right now?" He looked up at the stars, glowing faintly above them. "I do," he said. "I think she never stopped." Anna leaned her head against his chest. "Then I think she's smiling." He didn't speak, just held her, tighter than ever. In the distance, the wind carried the sound of a songbird, the first of the season. A signal. That light, once buried beneath years of shadow, had finally come home. And it wasn't going anywhere. The story of Ethan and Anna teaches us that true family is not defined by blood, but by love, courage, and the willingness to protect what's right. It reminds us that even in a world filled with shadows and injustice, one person's unwavering stand can become a sanctuary for the vulnerable. Justice may be delayed, and evil may come in many forms, but with compassion, resilience, and truth, light will always find a way to return. Most of all, it teaches us that the greatest legacy we can leave is not power or wealth, but protection, dignity, and unconditional love.